Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from here at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith, and I'll be providing our commentary for the duration of this coverage, broadcasting from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. I'm joined tonight by Stephen Young, who is running the technical aspects of our show. Adam Bernstein is out manning the tracking cameras here at the press site, as well as doing some still photography. We also have support for tonight's mission by a couple of friends. We have Chuck Briggs. You can see his tracking camera views here. We'll be going back and forth between Adam and Chuck's throughout the evening, as well as Pete Karstens, who's bringing us a bit of a celestial view. See if we can bring that back in just a little bit. We're getting some pre-live shots of both Saturn and Jupiter, so keep an eye out for those and bring those to you as soon as they're back. In the center of your screen, you're taking a look at a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket at the heart of Space Launch Complex 40, otherwise known as Slick 40. T-minus 59 minutes, 48 seconds. SpaceX will attempt to launch the Starlink 6-24 mission. This is the 29th dedicated mission launching SpaceX's upgraded Starlink V2 mini satellites, and is the second launch attempt for SpaceX just today. This will be their second double launch day if all goes according to plan this evening, as they had a successful launch of the Starlink 7-5 mission from Vandenberg Space Force Base over on the West Coast earlier. We'll revisit that in just a little bit. To follow along with some of the launch photography from tonight's mission, go ahead and follow Adam Bernstein. He is on X. That is his handle there, ABernNYC. This is one of many examples that he has up on his X feed right now, formerly Twitter. So if you're not already, be sure to follow him, as well as Spaceflight Now on X for not only launch photography, but launch replay videos, as well as other original reporting. For tonight's mission, SpaceX is targeting a T0 liftoff time at 10:17 p.m. Eastern. For our viewers joining from around the world, that's 02:17 UTC Sunday morning. If you'd like to help support our coverage of the space program, there's a quick and easy way to do that. If you just hit the like button, click subscribe, and ring the bell so you get notifications when new videos are posted and you don't miss any of our live streams. You can also share the stream, and it'll help more people find this coverage and everything else going on with our channel. And naturally, we can't do these launch broadcasts without the support of viewers like you, so thank you for being with us, as well as our wonderful channel members, like Callistia Lee, who's been a member for 1 month, saying hello from Port St. Lucie, Florida. Hope you have some good views of the launch tonight. And thank you again for being a channel member. Really appreciate it. Channel members get access to 4K live views of all the missions from Florida's Space Coast, as well as member-only videos and discounts at our online shop. That's shop.spaceflightnow.com. You can also join and be a part of the conversation here on this launch and others in the future by using the YouTube Super Chat feature. It's a great way to help support the channel and also get in on the conversation tonight. T-minus 56 minutes, 18 seconds and counting. just about 20 minutes away from the point at which the launch director would give their go for the start of propellant load. It's just a reminder and a bit of housekeeping if you haven't been with us for a recent launch. SpaceX is no longer providing the mission audio ahead of the final 5 minutes of the count, so we'll rely on our extensive experience in covering SpaceX and Falcon 9 missions to help guide you through the count and talk about some of the visual milestones that are markers of fueling proceeding on track. SpaceX is running the countdown from its Hangar X site here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center, at the facility where they refurbish the Falcon boosters and prepare them for new flights. As you see with this one, this will be the 4th flight of this particular booster, tail number B1080. We'll have more on its history in just a little bit. SpaceX also has support for the launch in part from the control room at their headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Again, they are targeting a T0 liftoff time of 10:17 p.m. Eastern, 02:17 UTC. If needed, they have 5 additional backup opportunities this evening if they have not already started fueling. Those start at 11:07 p.m. and roll right on to 2:15 a.m. Eastern Time. And if for whatever reason none of those pan out, SpaceX also has 5 backup opportunities during a window tomorrow. It stretches from 9:51 p.m. until 1:50 a.m. No T-minus 54 minutes, 33 seconds and counting. Weather looking pretty pristine tonight coming into this evening's launch attempt. The 45th Weather Squadron's launch forecast pegged a 95% favorable weather conditions for liftoff. The primary concern for tonight is the liftoff winds, though. They also noted that there is an upper-level wind shear gauged from low to moderate risk, so something they will keep an eye on throughout the count as they get closer to the planned liftoff time. If needed, the backup window, also very good weather-wise, also 95%, with wind being less of a watch item, which is certainly good. T-minus 53 minutes, 31 seconds and counting. As we continue to step through the countdown procedure, let's go ahead and take a look at what that'll look like as we get closer to the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. T-minus 38 minutes. That's when the launch director again will give the results of the go, no-go poll for the start of propellant load, which, again, as a reminder, we will not hear that call out because SpaceX is not providing mission audio. But just keep an eye on the T-minus clock. Watch out for that. I'll, of course, let you all know that if you're listening and not watching super attentively. So keep the volume up and I'll keep you in the loop. If the go is given for the start of propellant load at T-minus 35 minutes, rocket-grade kerosene, or RP-1, will be loaded onto the first and second stages of the Falcon 9. At the same time, liquid oxygen will start flowing aboard the first stage. At T-minus 16 minutes, it's the turn of liquid oxygen to start flowing onto the second stage. Before that, though, at about T-minus 20 minutes, 20 seconds, give or take, we'll see the so-called big vent from the strong back. It's a sign that the feed lines are being chilled, and it's a good visual indication that the fueling process is moving forward as planned. At T-minus 7 minutes, the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines will get underway. It involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and the turbo pumps, which helps protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before liftoff, first stage kerosene tank should be full. About 4.5 minutes from liftoff, we'll see the strong back retract sequence begin. It'll start with the opening of the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings, and then that transporter erector or strong back will recline to 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. Stay in that position until liftoff, at which point it will peel back much more quickly, clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. About 2 minutes to lift off. Liquid oxygen should be fully loaded onto the launch vehicle, at which point the Falcon 9 will be fully fueled with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown will be handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks will be brought up to flight pressure. 45 seconds out, the launch director will give their go for liftoff. The engine ignition command will be issued at T-minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 engines ignite and are healthy, the computer will give the command for the hold-down clamps to release the Falcon 9 for liftoff at T0. Again, targeting that liftoff at 10:17 p.m. Eastern tonight. Now T-minus 50 minutes, 30 seconds to that point. T-minus 49 minutes, 12 seconds and counting. As we get closer to liftoff, let's talk a little bit about where this Falcon 9 will be headed after it leaves the pad. Again, liftoff is coming up currently at 10:17 p.m. Eastern. The Falcon 9 will leave Slick 40 Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, and it will fly in a southeast trajectory towards the Caribbean. Following stage separation, the first stage will land on one of SpaceX's 3 drone ships. The one on deck tonight is a shortfall of gravitas. The upper stage will continue on with the Starlink satellites. The fairing halves will jettison a bit downrange of the map as well. SpaceX's recovery ship Doug is on deck tonight to scoop those up from the Atlantic. Of course, it and the other recovery ship here on the East Coast, Bob, were named after former NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, the duo of the Demo 2 mission from back in May of 2020. Now T-minus 47 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. One of the benefits of partnering with P. Carson's for these launches is he's able to bring us some solar system views from some of our celestial neighbors. Go ahead and take a look at his camera right now. You're seeing Jupiter there at the center of your screen with some of its moons. On the bottom left of the screen, that is Callisto. Up and to the right, the moon immediately northeast of Jupiter from our perspective. That's Europa, the destination of the Europa Clipper, coming up 1 year from now in October of 2024 is when that mission is set to launch. That'll be heading off on a Falcon Heavy rocket from Pad 39A here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. On the top right, that moon is Ganymede, and it's a little hard to see because of the brightness of Jupiter itself, but just on the northeast corner or part of the planet, Io is trying to peek out, but it's being obscured by the brightness of Jupiter itself, so you really can't distinguish it from the ball of light that is Jupiter right now. But our thanks again to Pete Carstens for bringing us these views of Jupiter and some of its moons tonight. As we are now about 45 minutes, 26 seconds away from the launch of the Falcon 9 rocket, as he's adjusting the brightness there. Appreciate that, Pete, and getting some more definition on Jupiter itself. You can see some of the bands that streak across the planet itself. It's a little hard to tell. I don't think we can see the spot. It's the iconic red spot, but these are some great views of Jupiter tonight, again, from Pete Carstens. As we turn back to views on the ground here, the Falcon 9 from Chuck Briggs. Want to note for those who haven't been with us for a recent launch, the tower structure that you see there just to the left of the Falcon 9 rocket, that is the crew and cargo access tower, which got its fourth and final segment recently that will allow SpaceX and NASA to launch both crew and cargo missions using the Dragon spacecraft from Pad 40 and create some redundancy from the capabilities there at Pad 39A. You can see from our vantage point here at the press site, this is another view of that tower framing the payload fairings with a little bit of an opening there. The crew access arm has not been added, but of course we'll continue to keep an eye on it. Let you know when that is brought aboard and as testing begins ahead of its first use, which NASA and SpaceX haven't said what mission may be using the tower first. That's still TBD at this point. But between crew and cargo, we're told it will be cargo first before it's used for a crew mission. And T-minus 43 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. Now T-minus 42 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. Just about 4 minutes away from the point at which the launch director would give the go, no-go results for the start of propellant load. As we mentioned earlier, though, this was a busy day for SpaceX. This is their second launch of the day. The previous mission was very early this morning in the 3 o'clock hour. Taking a look at the replay on the left-hand side of your screen, as this Falcon 9 for the Starlink 7-5 mission lifted off from Vandenberg Space Force Base.
Go SpaceX, go Starlink Group 7-6.
This mission also marked the 16th flight for this particular booster. It's been a workhorse for SpaceX, not one of the flight leaders. That honor and distinction belong to boosters 1058 as well as 1060. This particular booster distinct of its own right, though, as one of only 5 that has been launched from all 3 of SpaceX's launch pads, actually. There was the landing on the drone ship there. No, T-minus 40 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. Taking a look back at Pete's tracking camera for another one of our solar system neighbors, another gas giant there. Saturn and its very distinct rings there in the center of your screen on the left-hand side. It's been a few decades since we launched a mission to Saturn. Last one would have been Cassini back in the late 90s. I don't believe the decadal recommended another mission to Saturn for the next decade of development, so it'll be some time before we see another spacecraft from the U.S. heading out towards that particular planet, but hopefully there will be another one in the next couple of decades. That would be excellent to see. A T-minus 39 minutes, 55 seconds and counting. About a minute and a half away from the call on propellant load. SpaceX appears to still be targeting liftoff at 10:17 p.m. Eastern Time, 02:17 UTC. As we approach the T-minus 35 minute point, keep an eye toward the bottom of the Falcon 9 first stage and look for that frost ring to start forming. That's an indication that those super chilled propellants, liquid oxygen, RP1, are in fact flowing on board the Falcon 9. And as the frost and the frigid temperatures of the propellants meet the warm Florida air, we see a little bit of vapor forming there as well. So some good visual indications that we'll be keeping an eye on as we get closer into the fueling, or further into the fueling process. T-minus 37 minutes, 4 seconds and counting. The launch team will have made a call now on the start of fueling, so we'll take a look. Watch out for that vapor ring forming at the bottom of the Falcon 9 coming up in just a little over a minute and a half. As I mentioned, this is excuse me, only the fourth flight of this particular booster. However, notable on this mission, they are flying 23 Starlink V2 mini satellites for the first time. Those who've been eagle-eyed watchers of launches from Florida will note that for the last several, they've been launching batches of 22 Starlink V2 mini satellites. So this will be the first time that they're adding a 23rd on top of the rest of the stack. That'll change things a little bit with the timing of flight after liftoff. The Falcon 9 will go through that timeline a little bit in more detail later on. But earlier this week, some of the key leaders of the commercial launch companies, SpaceX being among them. They were up on Capitol Hill at a Senate subcommittee meeting talking about principally regulations around commercial spaceflight that involves crew. But one of the points that Bill Gerstenmaier with SpaceX brought up was concerning the ability to be able to push things with additional flight tests. So as we wait for the start of fueling, which is going to begin the next 20 seconds or so, here's Bill Gerstenmaier talking about that, answering a question from Senator Ted Cruz of Texas.
We've flown 74 flights this year. We learn from every one of those flights, and that learning, if we're open and transparent and we see where problems are, we can fix those small problems before they become big problems. So sometimes it's seen as we're rushing to flight, but we're actually, by flight testing, we're effectively flight testing the vehicle every time we fly, and we're learning and we're developing. We're doing the same thing with Starship. Starship's test flight may, to some, have looked like a failure. It was not a failure. It was a huge learning experience for us. We gained more data from that flight, more knowledge that helps us advance than we could have through 1,000 years of analysis and mathematical studies and tests. Going to flight, still protecting the public, keeping the environment safe, allows us to move at the fastest pace we can. So I'm a strong supporter of active flight test.
And again, that was Bill Gerstenmaier with SpaceX in a hearing before a Senate subcommittee on science and space, talking both about needing to be able to push the envelope when it comes to their Falcon fleet of rockets, as well as you heard at the last part of his comments, getting closer to the second integrated test flight of the Starship rocket from their Starbase facility down near Boca Chica Beach in Texas. T-minus 33 minutes, 36 seconds and counting. Do have confirmation from SpaceX that propellant load is underway now, and so we should see a little bit of vapor, a little bit of frost forming near the bottom of the rocket. This also does commit them to attempting to launch tonight at 10:17 p.m. Eastern, 02:17 UTC, Sunday morning. Again, this will be the second double launch day for SpaceX if they are able to successfully launch this Falcon 9 rocket tonight, following up on a successful liftoff of the Falcon 9 from the West Coast earlier today. Certainly appreciate the 6,000 of you that are watching with us live, as we're a little over a half an hour away from SpaceX's 76th launch of the year. If you haven't already, a great way to help support our coverage this evening is quick and easy. If you just hit the like button, it allows more people to find our coverage here on YouTube and allows the algorithm to do that thing it does. So we'd greatly appreciate that. Now T-minus 31 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. T-minus 31 minutes, 33 seconds and counting. Starting to see a little vapor forming around the base of the Falcon 9 rocket. Good visual cue in addition to SpaceX's comments that fueling is in fact getting underway as those super cold propellants are meeting the more humid Florida air here tonight. T-minus 30 minutes, 10 seconds and counting. We're in the middle of the weekend, and it has been a busy start to the weekend for SpaceX, in addition to the launch this morning and the launch on deck tonight at both California and here in Florida. Things were hopping over in Texas at Starbase as SpaceX conducted a static fire test of Ship 26. As you might recall, Ship 25 currently stacked on top of Booster 9. You see the short static fire tests that SpaceX conducted. This was Friday afternoon. SpaceX further commenting later on after this test occurred that this was a single engine static fire that demonstrated flight-like startup for a Starship deorbit burn. For those who may not be following the Artemis program super closely, Starship will be the human landing system lander that will bring crew down to the surface of the moon on both the Artemis 3 and Artemis 4 missions. So being able to prove out the landing capabilities of Starship, as well as being able to bring it back up off the surface, are going to be critical items that SpaceX will need to prove out to both itself as well as to NASA as we get closer and closer to those missions coming up. Now, T-minus 28 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. T-minus 27 minutes, 51 seconds and counting. As we do count on channel members to help support our coverage, do want to recognize and welcome both Gary Haynes, who is joining us at the mission specialist level, and FCAW Monkey 422 joining us at the pad leader level. So thank you to you both for supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now. Both of them, as well as our other channel members, have access to live 4K views of all the launches from here in Florida, as well as discounts at the online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com, and those member-only videos as well. So thank you to our channel members for support. And of course, if you want to help be part of the conversation this evening, you can also use the YouTube Super Chat feature. If you'd like to get a shout out or have a comment or question be a part of the show, assuming it is appropriate, of course. So please use best judgment and discretion on that, but we'd love to help you be a part of the conversation. Seeing a little more venting there from the Falcon 9 rocket as fueling continues to get underway. A T-minus 26 minutes, 33 seconds and counting. About 3.5 minutes ago, helium loading began into the pressure vessels on the first stage. Helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellants during a flight. Propellant tanks, I should say. Coming up in just over a minute at T-minus 25 minutes, that helium will start being loaded into the storage tanks on the second stage. I want to thank Mel Roberts Harold, one of our regular viewers here, for Super Chat donation, $5. Really appreciate that, Mel. Says, I truly believe that each new mission brings something to the table for our future. Certainly there are always interesting things to watch with each and every mission. This being the first time SpaceX is launching 23 of its Starlink V2 mini satellites, building out its ever-expanding constellation to bring broadband internet to folks around the world. One of a number of companies in that endeavor. back to Amazon, getting in on that action with the launch of its first 2 Kuipersat demonstration satellites aboard an Atlas V rocket not too long ago. Now T-minus 25 minutes and counting. Most of the Kuipersat constellation will be launched aboard ULA's forthcoming Vulcan Centaur rocket. The first flight of that, the company is targeting December of this year. That will be using or sending up Astrobotic's Peregrine lunar lander on its way to the moon. In fact, for those who are in Pittsburgh, if you've got some family or friends in that area, the Moonshot Museum has a great view into the clean room for Astrobotic, and you can actually see the Peregrine lunar lander there right now. Not to sound like a car salesman, but it's for a limited time only, as this is the last weekend that Peregrine will be viewable from the Moonshot Museum, as they're in the process of packing up the lander and getting ready to send it on down here to Florida ahead of the inaugural launch of ULA's Vulcan rocket. Of course, we'll have much more coverage on that mission as we get closer to it. That'll be certainly one to watch. Next up for Vulcan after that will be the launch of Sierra Space's Dream Chaser. It's a space plane that will be a cargo vehicle similar to the Northrop Grumman Cygnus vehicle, as well as the SpaceX Cargo Dragon will be used for commercial resupply services missions to the International Space Station. Again, that will launch on the second launch of ULA's Vulcan rocket over at Slick 41. Now T-minus 23 minutes and counting. T-minus 22 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. Following this mission's liftoff, assuming all goes well, we do get a good launch at 10:17 p.m. tonight. Let's go ahead and take a look, a little peek into the future where this mission will fall as far as its place in SpaceX's records. That's T-minus 21 minutes, 38 seconds and counting. Just caught a slight graphical error, so we'll come back to the mission stats in just a moment here. In the meantime, want to welcome John Johnston to channel membership at the pad leader level. Really appreciate the support, John. Also want to give a shout out to Sunny Skied Up for a £5 super chat donation. Sunny says, with our advances in modern space technology, it's still awesome to know that each flight can teach us so much, and flights are always awesome to watch. Definitely agree on both of those points, Sunny. And Ezo the Tiger with a $1 super chat donation. Really appreciate the both of you helping to support our coverage, as well as to John for joining us as one of our latest channel members. Now T-minus 20 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. About 20 seconds, keep an eye out for the start of the big vent from the strong back. Another good visual indication that fueling is continuing on track and on pace tonight. And there we see the start of that big vent, just as we mentioned. This is an indication that the feed lines are being chilled as SpaceX prepares to start loading liquid oxygen onto the second stage coming up in less than 4 minutes, T-minus 16 minutes to be exact. Take another look at the venting from Chuck Briggs' camera there. Whereas our camera, the big vent was basically coming directly at us. We see it more from a perpendicular perspective from Chuck's camera, so we appreciate having this additional view, a little bit of reflection on the water there near the pad. T-minus 19 minutes, 23 seconds and counting. T-minus 18 minutes, 43 seconds and counting. Let's come back to those mission stats here. This will be the fourth flight of this particular Falcon 9 first stage booster, tail number 1080. This will be SpaceX's 266th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 72nd Falcon 9 launch of 2023. This will be the 210th Falcon booster reflight, so the launch of a booster that's flown at least once. This is SpaceX's 76th orbital launch of 2023, 75th coming just this morning. This will be the 89th orbital launch within the last 365 days, so keeping a rolling track over the last year kind of gives us a good sort of consistent barometer to keep track of. This will be SpaceX's 150th orbital launch from Pad 40, so a pretty special milestone for the company there. This will be the 205th overall orbital launch from Pad 40. And last but not least, this will be the 58th orbital launch from Cape Canaveral this year, counting both Kennedy Space Center as well as Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. No T-minus 17 minutes, 18 seconds and counting. T-minus 17 minutes and counting. Want to acknowledge and thank Who Knows for a $2 super chat, as well as that furry biker. As a question, will the space plane on Vulcan land back at KSC? So it's a little hard to give a concrete answer to that, as you see the big event starting to come to an end. It'll be winding down in just the next few seconds here. There it goes. There's the end of the big vent. Coming back to Biker's question, it certainly has the capability to, as we, of course, saw many space shuttle orbiters land here at what was the space shuttle landing facility, now the launch and landing facility that is under the purview of Space Florida. That is one of the landing sites where it could return. However, a number of airports and spaceports around the country have gotten the permissions to allow for the reentry and landing of the Sierra Space Dream Chaser space plane, including the Rocket City, Huntsville, Alabama, where folks can see the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, home of Space Camp. Fun place for both kids and adults. I actually worked in Huntsville for about 4.5 years, and they've got some great exhibits. It's one of the few places around the country where you can actually see a full Saturn V launch vehicle. And they're in the midst of refurbishing the vehicles in their rocket garden, so keep an eye for the reopening of that. It should be pretty spectacular once all that work is said and done. Now T-minus 15 minutes and counting. Want to thank Space Pony for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership. Really appreciate Space Pony for helping to share the love and bringing another new person into channel membership. Let's see. Looks like it went to Eric Scott. So Eric now has access to our 4K live views for all of our launches from here in Florida, as well as discounts in our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com. So thanks again to Space Pony for that. A T-minus 14 minutes, 16 seconds and counting. We're less than 14 minutes to the planned liftoff of the Starlink 6-24 mission. Want to thank a couple of folks for supporting our coverage through the YouTube Super Chat feature. Mel joining us again with a $5 Super Chat saying that her girls back in Chicago are watching tonight. So hello to Meg and Mole. Chicago's one of my favorite cities. Actually a Northwestern alum, go Cats. So much love to the Chicagoland area. Also want to thank Doc Dweeb for a $10 Super Chat donation. Says, been watching for a while. Time to add the coffee budget. More of a tea drinker myself, but appreciate the sentiment. Streaming on Starlink from Colorado. Doc Dweeb asks, why 23 sats when last launch was 22? So SpaceX has been looking at ways that it can increase the performance of its Falcon 9 vehicles, and we believe that the added performance needed to launch an additional Starlink satellite may be what they want to test the capability of or prove out with this launch tonight. It's a little bit of speculation on our part, but as we've seen with the count up timeline, looks like the first stage burn is going for just a little bit longer tonight compared to other missions, so that could be a reason why that they need a little bit more oomph to support that additional satellite. Thanks for the question, Doc Dweeb. And to Nicholas for a very generous $20 Super Chat donation saying enjoying your content. We appreciate you being with us and enjoying you joining us and supporting us as well. Now T-minus 11 minutes, 47 seconds and counting. So we're getting close to the final 10 minutes of the count. Let's take a moment and talk about the Falcon 9 vehicle itself. Stands at 70 meters, 229 feet tall, and has a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. The bottom 2/3 of the rocket make up the first stage. The booster flying today, B-1080, making its fourth flight. At the base of the first stage are the 9 Merlin engines. You can see them in the inset image on the right-hand side of your screen. They burn rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are the black carbon fiber landing legs that will be used to land the first stage on the drone ship. Again, tonight, SpaceX is using the drone ship, a shortfall of Gravitas. Moving on up the vehicle, above the first stage is the inner stage, which is a composite structure. Consists of an aluminum honeycomb core surrounded by carbon fiber. You can see there on the image on the right, the deployable hypersonic grid fins They are titanium winglets that help provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back down toward the drone ship like a massive dart. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the second stage. At first stage, main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. Also inside that inner stage is the second stage engine nozzle, which is safely housed inside there until stage separation. Speaking of which, second stage, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket, powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine or MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, and it produces more than 200,000 pounds of thrust. It'll be fired twice on today's flight to place the 23 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. Same with the first stage. The MVAC engine burns that mix of RP1 and LOX. It will ignite a third time after deployment of the Starlink satellites for a deorbit burn. Drives the upper stage back into the atmosphere while it will burn up, helping to eliminate the risk of any unnecessary space debris on this mission. And last but not least, as we are crossing the 9-minute mark to liftoff, are the payload fairings. That's what is used to house those 23 Starlink satellites. The payload fairings are made up of a carbon composite material. They're 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall, 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. 2 halves in the payload fairing will be recovered by one of the recovery vessels stationed down at the Atlantic right now. They will gently splash down under parachutes. They'll be brought back like the first stage will to Port Canaveral, where they will be offloaded, refurbished, and prepped for future flights. Now T-minus 18 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. T-minus 7 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. I want to thank FCA Monkey 422, one of our newest channel members, for already showing some generosity and gifting a Spaceflight Now membership. Which unfortunately the live chat is not letting me see who they gifted the membership to, but really appreciate that, FCAW Monkey. Also want to thank Matt McCarthy, excuse me, Matt, for a very generous $10 super chat donation, as well as to Simon Garibaldi, who's one of our regulars joining us again. Welcome, Simon, saying evening all. Appreciate the super chat donation from the both of you. It's another quick and easy way to help support our coverage as we get down to the last 6.5 minutes before liftoff. If you hit the like button, it allows more people to help find our coverage as we get ready to see, as things continue to move smoothly with the count, the second launch of the day, marking SpaceX's second double launch day of just this month. Now T-minus 6 minutes, 13 seconds and counting. Now T-minus 5 minutes, 20 seconds to liftoff of the Starlink 6-24 mission. While we still have a few minutes, let's briefly talk about the flight history of this booster. Again, this is booster 1080 making its 4th flight tonight. Its first mission was, in fact, a crew mission earlier this year, the Axiom 2 launch that happened back on May 21st of this year. You're starting to hear a little bit of venting noise coming up on the strongback retract shortly. The process beginning in the next couple of seconds here. The clamp arms will begin to open and we'll push in for a little tighter views in just a moment.
Strongback retract has started.
You hear that call out. Bit of housekeeping note here. The clock that you see on the upper right-hand corner of the screen, that is the current real-time countdown of the mission. You see those clamp arms opening up just beneath the payload fairings. The clock that you see on the SpaceX feed, that is on a bit of a delay, so as you see some events happen as we call them out in real time, you'll see a bit of the delayed video coming through on the SpaceX feed. Coming back to the booster history real quick. Following the Axiom 2 launch of the 2nd private astronaut mission to the space station on July 1st, the European Space Agency used a SpaceX Falcon 9 to launch the Euclid Space Telescope, starting off the back half of this year. And then finally, the first Starlink mission for this booster, Starlink 6-11, was back on August 27th. Now T-minus 3 minutes, 7 seconds and counting.
Stage 1 lock load complete.
Now the call out for stage 1 locks loading complete. Its fueling is beginning to wrap up on the Falcon 9 rocket. In just about a minute from now, you should hear the call out for stage 2 locks load complete. Really want to appreciate the 23,000 of you who are joining us for our live coverage tonight. As we get down to the last 2 minutes of the count, if you could hit the like button, that'll allow the YouTube algorithm to bring in just a few more folks to enjoy the 2nd double launch day for SpaceX in the month of October. T-minus 1 minute, 49 seconds and counting.
Stage 2 lock load complete.
Hear the call out for stage 2 locks load complete. The Falcon 9 rocket now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. As we approach the final minute of the countdown at T-minus 1 minute, as a reminder, the Falcon 9's flight computers will take control and stage 1 and 2 will pressurize for flight.
Ground gas close up.
The onboard computer will perform checks of the first stage engine steering system as well. At T-minus 1 minute, 10 seconds and counting. Now 1 minute to go. T-minus 50 seconds.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Air confirmation that the onboard computers have control of the countdown. Coming up in just a few seconds, we should hear the launch director give the go for launch.
SpaceX launch director, go for launch.
And there's that call out. Falcon 9 clear to launch. 30 seconds out. Thousands of gallons of water will be dumped onto the launch pad to protect the vehicle from the reflected sound waves. T-minus 20 seconds to liftoff. Keep an eye out the bottom of the rocket for a green flash. That is the T-tab ignition fluid. Coming up on the final 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 6-24 mission. This is SpaceX's second launch of the day, having launched 21 Starlinks from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. Now 20 seconds into flight. Now T+30 seconds. We're hearing some of the roar of those 9 Merlin engines from the press site. Let's listen in. Getting some great tracking views here from our own Adam Bernstein at the press site. Now about 47 seconds into flight. "50 seconds in. Merlin engines should be throttling down soon as the vehicle approaches max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. The call out Falcon 9 is supersonic, traveling faster than the speed of sound. The call for max Q to take a look at Pete Carson's tracking camera there. The view of the 9 Merlin engines burning, now a little over a minute and a half into flight. Falcon 9 approaching 25 kilometers above the Earth's surface. Now approaching 2 minutes into the mission. We're getting close to the point of main engine cutoff, or MECO. The Merlin engines will shut down. It'll be followed in short order by stage separation and ignition of the upper stage. Jettison of the payload fairings comes shortly after that. At T+2 minutes, 14 seconds into flight. Great views here from Pete Carson's tracking camera. Some really nice colors coming from the Falcon 9. You see main engine cutoff there. Stage separation underway. And that Merlin vacuum engine coming to life. And you see the delayed views from the SpaceX's onboard cameras. On the left there, we're still seeing Pete's tracking camera views as the Falcon 9 upper stage continues on its flight and upward trajectory. On the right-hand side of your screen in that upper box, you see those titanium winglets start to come out as the first stage, and you can see the payload fairings coming off of the upper stage there. See the replay on the right. And by replay, I meant delayed feed. So on the bottom right-hand side of your screen now, that is the Merlin vacuum engine from the upper stage's onboard cameras. The top right box is still live. That is darkened views, but that is from the first stage of the Falcon 9 vehicle making its way back down toward the drone ship. And on the left is Pete's tracking camera, keeping an eye on the Falcon 9's second stage from the ground here. Views coming from a little bit south of us in Vieira here, for those familiar with the Space Coast. Now about 4 minutes, 15 seconds into flight. The next big milestone will come up in less than 2 minutes. At T+6 minutes, 12 seconds, the first stage entry burn will begin. because of the positioning of everything, we should be able possibly to see the entry burn tonight, but it's always a little bit of a uncertainty depending on the clouds and the angle of everything. T plus 4 minutes, 57 seconds and counting. T plus 5 minutes, 14 seconds and counting. SpaceX confirms that both the first and second stages continue on a nominal path, as we are now less than a minute from the start of the first stage entry burn. And T plus 5 minutes, 45 seconds and counting. Less than 30 seconds to that entry burn starting. Again, the two boxes on the right-hand side of your screen are the SpaceX feeds, so they're on about a 10-second delay from the real-time count clock that we have there on the upper right-hand corner of the screen. So the events will come at just a little bit of a delay on the SpaceX feed from what we see here. And you see the start of the entry burn there, T plus 6 minutes, 24 seconds. That's from Pete's camera view. That burn will last just a few more seconds from Pete's perspective, and you see the delayed view from SpaceX's onboard cameras in the upper right-hand corner and now in the center of your screen. If you look at and you see the end of that burn there. Next milestone coming up is in just over a minute from now. The first stage landing burn will begin at T plus 8 minutes, 1 second. Unfortunately, we won't be able to see that from the ground, but SpaceX's onboard cameras from both the Falcon 9 first stage, which you see there on the left-hand side of your screen, will continue to provide views of that. The box on the right will shift from the Merlin vacuum engine view that you see right now to a view from the drone ship. Now T plus 7.5 minutes into flight. Now T plus 8 minutes, 1 second. This is the start of the landing burn in real time. Again, the time to watch now at this point is at the bottom of your screen. So landing burn will begin.
Stage 1, landing burn, start.
Right now.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
That landing burn will last about 10 more seconds as it makes its way down to the drone ship.
Stage 1, landing leg deploy.
The landing leg is extended. The first stage booster successfully back on the drone ship, a short fall of
Stage 1,
gravitas.
landing confirmed.
This booster now having made its fourth flight to and from space, sending the 23 Starlink V2 mini satellites well on their way.
And back shutdown.
Need to call out for that Merlin vacuum engine to cease firing. It'll remain in a coast phase now until T plus 54 minutes, 10 seconds, at which point it will reignite for a 3-second burn, setting up the Starlink satellites to deploy at T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 29 seconds. Taking a look back here on the ground at pad 40, where the Falcon 9 rocket launched just 9.5 minutes ago. a so far successful start to SpaceX's second launch of the day. Very busy time for SpaceX as it not only had these 2 launches today, but it is also preparing to do testing with not 1 but 2 of its ship vehicles over at Boca Chica at Starbase tomorrow. So a very busy time for SpaceX at all of its sites around the country. Now T plus 10 minutes, 8 seconds, and counting into flight. Do want to circle back and thank some of the folks that helped support our coverage this evening that wasn't able to get to right before liftoff, but do want to acknowledge and give our appreciation to all of you. To Cody Allen for becoming a channel member at the pad leader level. Really appreciate you for that, Cody. And several super chat donations. Charles Boyer with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Charles. Susanna Stucco with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Susanna. Paul Chaknis and Ageless Auctions, both each making a $20 super chat donation. Thank you to the both of you. Double Throws with a $2 super chat. Asking us to show the local times so we can show we are live, which we certainly have been. Up on the upper right-hand corner of your screen, it is just before 10:30 here local time on the East Coast. So there's that. Tracy Nichols, appreciate the $10 super chat donation, watching from St. Augustine, Florida. Reti with a $2 super chat donation. Thank you, Reti. And SG joining us once again with another $5 super chat with the thumbs up fox and the kimono emoji that I appreciate so much. Taking a look back at this morning's Starlink launch, SpaceX not only showing some views of the liftoff from Vandenberg Space Force Base, but also of the deployment of the Starlink satellites as well. 21 Starlinks on that particular mission. This is a view of those deploying from the Falcon 9 upper stage for the Starlink 7-5 mission. Take a look at the reflective side of this stack. You can see a really nice view of the Falcon 9 upper stage as the Starlinks drift away from the vehicle. And keep an eye on the top and bottom of the stack here in the cameras. You can see, and there's the Merlin vacuum engine before it made its deorbit burn and the stack of 21 Starlinks drifting away. And as we take a look at this one more time, you can see in the top and the bottom of your screen the retracting of the 2 arms that were holding the Starlinks in place. You see those folding up to the body of the second stage of the Falcon 9 before the vehicle made its deorbit burn, keeping everything all nice and tucked in. Now that we've had a successful liftoff nearly 14 minutes ago, go ahead and take one last look at the mission stats of where this particular Falcon 9 flight happened to fall for SpaceX. But before we get to that, want to thank a few more super chat donations that came in. Brad Hedinger joining us again with a $2 super chat donation. Thank you, Brad. Says, another awesome broadcast gain. Thanks, Spaceflight Now, friends. Well, thank you, Brad. Really appreciate you being here and for the support. Rob Dorr, $5 super chat, saying, just watch this from Cocoa Beach Pier. Awesome watching this feed along with it. Well, we're certainly more than happy to provide some pre-flight viewing and commentary and Cocoa Beach Pier, a great place to watch, especially a Southeast trajectory mission. And also the Tiger once again joining us with a $5 super chat saying just watch from Port St. John. Good launch. Excellent. Port St. John, another great spot here on Florida's Space Coast to watch a rocket launch for those that may be thinking about coming down and seeing SpaceX launch, since they are going about every 4 days on average. And Ross Warren with a $2 super chat saying thanks again for the excellent coverage. Well, thank you, Ross, for helping to make that coverage happen. Turning now to the mission stats for this particular flight. T plus 15 minutes, 15 seconds. This was the 4th flight of the Falcon 9 booster, tail number 1080. This was SpaceX's 266th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 72nd Falcon 9 launch of 2023, the 210th Falcon booster reflight. For this calendar year, this was SpaceX's 76th orbital launch, having made the 75th just this morning. In the last 365 days, SpaceX has made 89 orbital launches. This was the 150th orbital launch from this particular pad, Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Overall, for the life of that launch pad, this was launch number 205. And last but not least, this was the 58th orbital launch between Cape Canaveral Space Force Station and NASA's Kennedy Space Center. No T plus 17 minutes, 26 seconds, and counting. Just as a reminder for those that didn't catch our comment on this earlier, because SpaceX is not providing mission audio nor the telemetry data on the Falcon 9 upper stage, we're going to go ahead and wrap up our live coverage here on YouTube, but be sure to keep an eye on our social media accounts, especially X, for an update on Starlink satellite deployment. That is T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes, 29 seconds into flight. Or for those that just want to look at a clock, that'll be right about 11:22 this evening Eastern time. Do want to thank a couple more super chat donations that came in since our last round of those. Dang Panda with a $10 super chat donation. Thank you, Panda. As well as Kevin Kelly also with a $10 super chat donation. Really appreciate the both of you supporting our coverage here, as well as everyone else who made a donation throughout the conversation, and to our newest channel members and those celebrating channel membership milestones, and those who were able to make a donation to others to become channel members themselves and check out some of the perks and benefits of that. So with that, we'll go ahead and wind down our live coverage. Want to thank, of course, Pete Carsons and Chuck Briggs for providing some excellent tracking views and views of some of our gas giant neighbors here in our wonderful solar system. Of course, Adam Bernstein out manning the tracking camera here at the press site. If you haven't already, be sure to follow Adam on X for launch photography from tonight's mission as well as all the other ones he helps us cover here. So big kudos to Adam for providing both tracking views tonight as well as some still photography that we will look forward to seeing later on this evening. T plus 19 minutes, 48 seconds into this current mission. Of course, Stephen Young for running all the technical aspects of the show. I've been your host, Will Robinson Smith. Thanks to everyone for being with us tonight and for all of us here at Spaceflight Now. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Sure to get some R&R in there. Relax. Stay safe. Be good to each other. And we will see you next time.